Café and Networking Podcast promotes business owners, business experts throughout the world. I'm Tom Reaoch, known as the King of Networking, connecting people from my unique communication lab in Brazil. And today we talk with Miracle Sims, joining us from Lithonia, Georgia. Miracle Sims is an actress, author, entrepreneur, and consultant. And she is the podcast host and creator of the God, Sex, and Love podcast. So Miracle, you have a lot going on. So tell us about your podcast and why it's a judgment-free zone for Christians to have an open dialogue about God, sex, and love.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Tom. Yes, God, Sex, and Love podcast is an open, an open place to be, transparent and have these open conversations. That's pretty much what's the inspiration for me back in the day. When I was single, I was struggling and trying to look for more Christian content because I am Christian. And I just would notice that the conversations would just be so limited or I couldn't relate. And so that started my, the beginning of my journey with God, Sex, and Love. But yeah, it just was this thing where, first I started on YouTube, just kind of sharing my thoughts and sharing how I felt as a Christian single woman. And then from there, to now sharing, I share daily inspiration as well as, I have the weekly talk show as well that I talk to guests and they share their journeys and whatnot. And we have that dialogue, or we have panel discussions and things like that. So, but for the most part, when people listen to the God, Sex, and Love podcast, they might see more content of the juice because I do daily inspiration.
The juice.
I try to have it. Yes, I call it the juice.
No, I guess it is. That's what wakes us up, right?
Right. Yeah, I was trying to think of some good, like a good breakfast thing, and I didn't want to do tea. I feel like tea was, people say tea all the time, so I like juice, and it's become this whole thing now. I have my own little lingo and everything that I say. But yeah, I'm just pretty much, I take time to Bible study, and then from there, I just kind of take the time to share and just share my Bible study experience. So that's what the juice is. It's like daily inspiration. Hopefully to encourage and inspire other people to do the same thing, to, take time to Bible study as well and just read it for themselves to get and build their own relationship with Christ. So
I think that's fantastic because you do have many personas. You're an actress, you're an author, and a consultant. But to the dimension of being a podcast host like I am, and I found that as an actor, as an author, we don't have the same chance to interact. As an actress, you're on the stage, you're portraying yourself, you've assumed a role. As an author, you've written something down in a book or a post. You may get comments back, but it's not the same interaction. On a podcast, it's back and forth, and many times it's forth and back, right? So you're talking about the juice. The juice is fluid, right?
Yes, sir. Honestly, the juice is something that I do alone. So it's not that I have a dialogue with anybody while I'm doing that outside of just me and the audience and whatever God gave me to say that morning. And so, that's kind of what that is. But again, the talk show version, that's where I talk to other people and we get more conversation. But I just felt like it was just very important for the Christian voice to be heard in the midst of all the different voices that are heard, around the world but specifically about God, sex, and love, because, in my opinion, I can look around and see what the world looks like without including God into the conversation of sex. And I know that may be taboo for some people. They might not understand. It might be uncommon to put those three words together. But in my mind, they should be together. And it shouldn't be as taboo as it is. At the end of the day, in my personal opinion, again, I feel like God should be involved in every aspect of your life, including sex and every other thing. So, that's, again, where the inspiration came from, just really looking for content back in the day for myself. And then I guess feeling like, well, maybe I'm supposed to be the person to fill in this gap. So.
Well, I think you are, man. I have to say, personally, I was inspired when I first did see on the Podmatch page where we both converged. You do have a lot of juice there. So it is, and there's a lot about you because, as I mentioned before we started, you have a lot of views. And I do understand how you adjusted that, and I think that's fantastic. Because at the same point, and we mentioned that, the three words God, sex, and love are not normally used together. If we go out there and see and make a Google search, each one of those is probably highly searched, individually. But to put them together and to talk about them in the same context, I think that's unique.
Thank you, sir. I mean, I guess, again, it all kind of stemmed from me, again, in my YouTube days, getting on there and just saying, I just was like, I kind of ripped the Band-Aid off from one of my first videos. And I just was like, look, these are things I think about all the time: God, sex, and my career. And I came back later to explain to people, like, okay, I don't just think about sex. I'm thinking about I want to get married. I want romance. All of that's together with me. But I just really wanted to rip the Band-Aid off of saying sex, because I'm just was like, again, as a Christian, it's like people, I don't know if they want to either, some Christians act like they don't or are above, being horny or whatever before marriage and whatnot.
Right.
Then, on the flip side, or people think that Christians, I know that they know people have sex because.
Well, probably everybody knows somebody, hopefully.
Yeah. So regardless of like what you believe and whatnot, like, there's a lot of that going on. And my whole thing is like, let's just be honest about it. Like, right. I believe what the Bible has to say about it. And I see more now as an adult that, okay, I see why we should do things God's way. However, I also feel like, let's be open and honest about, where we are and the struggle of that and what that actually looks like. Even if you, for example, decide to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to hold on to my virginity in X, Y, and Z, that's still a struggle. And people need to know that. Like,
right.
Let's not act like that's the easiest thing in the world to do, because it's not, especially with all the temptations around us and whatnot. So, yeah,
I can see how you brought that together as a Christian, and when we go back into the origins of religion, all of them, some more high power was out there, showing, saying, telling, writing, maybe chiseling in a granite stone. But creating things for others to talk about and reflect on. And I think part of that is to carry that message. It has to, because things change all the time. Life's changed, right? And today those things should be brought, I think, my opinion, into let's call it a modern context. Because we're not still out there roaming in a desert. It's a different world today. People are different. Kids are different. Youth, as you know, really different, right? And I think the way you've approached that is healthy and necessary. So I want to commend you.
Thank you so much. I mean, again, I hope that anybody that listens to the podcast, God, Sex, and Love, or, even if they watch the talk show, God, Sex, and Love, basically, I just would hope that people, are encouraged and inspired to, again, build and cultivate their relationship for themselves. Because at the end of the day, yes, we can always listen to a pastor or somebody else, but at the end of the day, if you haven't read the Bible for yourself, then how do you know what's, so that's one of the things I hope that it helps and, helps people do. But then I also hope that it kind of just balances out the conversation of God, sex, and love. Because, again, like, even when we just talk about the sex aspect, again, you can look all around about what people think about it and how they think you do it and all these different things. But if God's version of that, or if God's desire for that is left out of the conversation, I just feel like there's just so many consequences and results of that we can just see all around us. I mean, from broken homes to divorce and all these different things that are results of God not being part of that conversation. So, again, I could probably go on and on about this. So it's my thing, but at the end of the day, I hope people are encouraged and inspired to get into the word for themselves, have these tough conversations, and and get around other people and be open and honest about it. Again, you can come from perspectives. You can come from, hey, I was a Christian all my life and I was a virgin and I held on, which is to me, like, I've heard about people that don't even kiss until they're married. And that blew my mind when I heard that. I was like, wow, that is amazing. The restraint it took all those years for you to do that is amazing to me. But then on the flip side, somebody might have the testimony of, hey, I was promiscuous and X, Y, and Z, and this is how God brought me out of that. And that's still as powerful. People need to hear all of these things because people talk about it.
Hear all sides of the story, right? Well, Miracle, it is a miracle. So how can our listeners find you?
Well, I mean, the main place to find me in particular will be actressmiraclesims.com. But for all the God, Sex, and Love content, you can go to godsexandlove.com.
godsexandlove.com. Very good, Miracle. Thanks for being part of our show today.
Thank you.
And for our listeners, again, you can find more information about Miracle Sims, and Miracle is Miracle, the last name Sims, Sims. Find her on LinkedIn and godsexandlove.com, godsexandlove.com. Café and Networking is brought to us by Focus MI Market Intelligence, an agricultural market research specialist in Brazil. More information at focusmi.com. Thanks for listening. Until the next time here at Café and Networking Podcast.